Today, Eliza and Jeremy are building custom headers for their Prerunner Ranger. And they're building shock hoops for their long travel coilovers. Then they're tying the roll cage to the frame. It's all right here on XOR.
Hey guys, welcome to XOR, and that stands for Extreme Off-Road, and that's what we do. We cut, we weld, we grind, and we fabricate some awesome rides for everything and anything off of the pavement. This year, we'll be taking our International Scout overlanding into the woods and turning our 1953 Willis wagon into a 1,000+ horsepowered mudslinging terror.
That's right. We're also going to be working on this first-gen Toyota Tacoma. Now, we're going to be doing a solid axle swap on this truck so we can take it out and kind of push it to its limits. But for now, we're going to be working on our 2002 Ford Ranger. Now, this thing is going to be a Coyote-powered, long-travel suspension, high-flying pre-runner. So there's really not much left to do but just get started. Our Prerunner started life as a stock 2002 Ford Ranger XLT with a V6 and an automatic transmission. After we dumped everything except the frame rails and the cab, we hit it with a race-ready paint job. A 63-inch spring swap and a built 9-inch got everything started. A Coyote illuminator got wedged in, followed by a roll cage. After modifying the chassis, it was time for a long travel race suspension to smooth out the ruts while we're running at wide open throttle. And with that all done, that brings us back out here to the engine. Now, this Coyote did not come in between the frame rails of this Ranger, so we can't exactly go buy a set of headers. So we're gonna have to custom make our own.
With the headers fabbed up and in place, that gives us the opportunity to bring our roll cage out to the front, build up shock hoops, and get our coilovers installed.
Now, before we start building our headers, we know from the other side that the shock hoop is gonna come in right about here. Well, I want my exhaust to exit somewhere in here, so this part of the body is going to be in the way. So we're just going to cut it out of the way. Now that the patch is made, we'll just kind of put it into place here. And after our patch panel is installed, to ensure everything flows in the right direction, we'll install the header gasket and the header flange. For the actual tubes themselves, we're using an 1 7/8" header builder kit from Summit Racing. The great thing about Summit's kit is that these are all mandrel bent tubes, so no matter where you cut them across the bend, the tube diameter stays the same, meaning the next piece will always line up. Here's a good approach. Install what will be the longest tube first, since it will be the trickiest one to get into place and will dictate the positioning of the other tubes. And here's a perfect example. This tube had to go on the underside of the motor mount just to get it where it needed to go. With the longest tube in place, it makes things a little bit easier because now it's apparent how much room you have or may not have. And tube number 2 will be our second longest run, so we're going to take the same approach. This one ends up going on the front side of the motor mount, but on the back side of the upper control arm mount. Tube 3 follows suit and barely clears the upper control arm mount. This is where the shape of these tubes come in handy, because the last tube is made up of two really short sections. And once you're happy with your results, you can commit to your design with several more strong tacks. Well, there you go. Now we're going to have to bring our header out here and down out of the way, but I'm going to have to put the upper control arm on first. But when you're doing your headers, just take your time because there's a whole lot of spaghetti going on in here. But if you just stay at it, you'll definitely get it all there.
Up next, we're getting our long travel coilovers mounted. And later, we're tying the roll cage to the frame. Subscribe today to PowerNation Plus and watch all your shows commercial-free.
Hey guys, welcome to XOR. Thought we'd take a little bit of time to talk about the awesome coilovers that are going onto the Prerunner. After talking to LSK, we went to summitracing.com, picked up a 10-inch stroke, 2.5-inch body remote reservoir coilover. Now what do those numbers mean? It's 10 inches of travel and 2.5 is the diameter of the body. Now it's important to know the diameter of the body to order the correct springs. Example, this is a 3-inch spring to fit over the 2.5-inch body. As far as spring weight, you'll need to know the four-corner weight of your project before you order your springs.
Now to get this big coilover mounted into the Ranger, we started by mocking it up on the passenger side. The very first thing we did is start bending the front part of the engine cage. Now the engine cage actually comes back into the cab and gets tied into the roll cage. After we did that, we came out and bent our first shock loop. Now once I had the shock loop in place, I was able to mount the top of the shock to the shock loop and the bottom of the shock down to the lower control arm. Once all that was in place, I was able to tie the shock loop into the engine cage. And when we're all done burning that in, that should give us plenty of strength to fly across the dunes. And this whole process starts by prepping the chassis to get rid of the surface rust and the OE undercoating. So that calls for a 3-inch sanding disc on our Matco angle grinder. After spending some time on our Edwards tube bender, the first piece to go in is our engine cage tube. It will tie the interior roll cage and the chassis together. To tie all this together, we're using 1 3/4 120 wall DOM tubing. The shock hoop itself is up next. It's the overall height of this piece that allows us to install such a long coilover. And notice how it fits perfectly around our newly built headers. For added strength, this bar will serve as a mounting point for a future lateral bar that will tie the driver and passenger sides of our engine cage together. And now for our coilover. We are not going to weld the tabs on the bottom of the shock to the lower control arm just yet. That's because we will need to adjust the angle of the shock after cycling the suspension fully. To mount our coilovers, we're using chassis tabs that we got from Ruffstuff Specialties. After welding the first tab on, it's real important to make sure the shock is centered in between the two tabs before you tack the second tab on. Now we're going to add a brace that ties our upper control arm mount into our shock hoop. And we'll follow that up with a brace that ties our shock hoop to our engine cage. And with all that tacked together, we just got one thing left to do, and that's find a spot for the reservoir. And well, this just kind of looks like a good spot. We got plenty of room on the other side also.
If you're working under the hood of your project and want to save some time, then Matco has a cordless ratchet to speed up the process. Their 16-volt, quarter-inch cordless ratchet kit comes with the ratchet, 2 lithium-ion batteries, and a battery charger so you can keep the ball rolling. It even has a heavy-duty carrying case. Matco says that their cordless ratchet has 35 foot-pounds of torque and a slim head design so that getting into tight places is not a problem.
When we come back, Eliza is installing floor plates so she can tie the roll cage to our Prerunner's frame. Stay tuned. Subscribe today to PowerNation Plus and watch all your shows commercial-free.
Hey guys, welcome back to XOR. Now that we've got the top side of our roll cage completely welded in, we can now tie it to the frame, and that begins with some cutting and bending. Just like with the shock hoops, I'm using the same 1 3/4 120 wall DOM tubing to make my frame tie-in. All of our Edwards gear gets a good workout, and this is no different. Their 10-ton bender quickly turns this piece of straight tube stock into the U shape that we need. It can easily bend 2-inch tube, Schedule 40 pipe, 2.5-inch tube, and even 2-inch square tube quickly and accurately. I'm cutting the plates that I will use to sandwich the cab floor out of 1/4-inch steel. And this time I'm using the 50-ton Ironworkers flat bar shear to cleanly make my cuts. With all my parts made, my next step is to cut off the excess tubing from the bottom of the roll cage that extends past the cab floor. I had intentionally left these pieces long so that I could maximize the height of the cage. The additional length allowed me to adjust the roll cage once it was fully welded, and we knew the height of our seats and test fit Jeremy and myself. I need to mark where I will punch a bolt hole through both plates of steel at once, so I position the plate where it'll sit on the cab floor. Positioned correctly under the roll cage B-pillar tube, a paint pen marks the spot. Now all I have to do is use the Ironworkers punch to finish the job.
If you guys have the iconic 4-liter in your 1997 to 2004 Jeeps, well, underhood temperatures may become an issue, especially when you're out on the trails. Well, DEI has designed a solution to help protect your fuel rails and fuel injectors from all that underhood heat and prevent misfires. Their kit comes with an exhaust manifold heat shield, fuel rail heat cover, 6 injector covers, and 12 new O-rings. If you're looking to keep your Jeep's fuel cool and reduce vapor lock, then check out DEI's Jeep Fuel Rail and Injector Cover Kit.
After the break, we finish tying our roll cage to the frame. Stick around. Subscribe today to PowerNation Plus and watch all your shows commercial-free.
Hey guys, welcome back to XOR. We're wrapping up tying in the roll cage to the frame on our Prerunner Ranger. Now with the holes punched through my plates, I'll reposition them on the cab floor and drill for my bolts. You'll notice that I marked the corners of both top and bottom plates so that I can realign them correctly when I go to bolt them together. Like always, we're taking our same approach to drilling, starting with the small bit and working our way up to the hole size we need. Another way we keep our builds consistent is our choice of fasteners. Our bolts are grade 8 and they come from Industrial Depot. The idea here is to sandwich the cab floor between the two steel plates and provide a spot to weld both the upper cage and the lower frame tie-in to. Nylock nuts are put into service here since we have no intention of ever removing these plates. You can actually see the floor get pressed between both plates as I tighten the bolts down. Next, the frame tie-in gets tacked to the bottom plate and will eventually be welded directly to the frame once everything is in place. Up top, the B-pillar cage tube gets tacked to the top plate. All right, all that's left to do is burn her in. For more information about anything you've seen on today's show, visit us at PowerNationTV.com.
Now, one of the most important aspects about off-roading is vehicle recovery because, well, you never know what you're going to run into out on the trail.
On our last XOR adventure, our buddy Jeff from Team Aries took on a trail called Powerline. And unfortunately, Powerline lived up to its reputation and put his JK in a slow, downward flop. After it came to a rest, we used Jeff's recovery gear, the winch on the front of his rig, and the one on our Scout to set him right again.
So here are some essential tools to have in your recovery bag before you hit the trails. First is a good heavy-duty tow strap. Now you're going to want one of these just in case your winch cable isn't long enough or you got to help your broken down buddy off the trails. And next is a snatch block. Now you're going to want one of these because if you run your cable through this back to your winch, it's going to increase the pulling force of your winch. Now next is a winch cable dampener. Now this is designed that if you put weight inside it and then lay it over your winch cable, if something happens, like if your winch cable snaps, this is going to drive the winch cable down to the ground, help protecting you and your vehicle. Now we're all out there to help protect Mother Nature, and this is a tree saver strap. Now this is designed to go around the trunk of the tree so you don't wrap your winch cable around the tree itself. And one of the last things you're going to want in your recovery bag is a D-ring style clevis. Now these come in pretty handy when you want to hook up your snatch block to your tree saver, or when you got to hook your tow strap up to your buddy. Now, if you don't have a winch on your vehicle, but still want to carry something to help get you unstuck, well, that's where traction mats come into play. Just slide these underneath the wheels that are spinning, and as soon as they get sucked under, you'll have all the traction you need.
This is the actual winch that we use to flip Jeff over. Now there are many options in the winch world, and here's some of the differences. First is your choice between synthetic rope and cable. Rope is actually stronger under the right conditions and does not store any energy, so there's no danger of whipping when broken. Cable, however, is most durable, but needs to be used with extra precaution. Next are fair leads. Roller fair leads use rollers in all 4 directions to reduce chafing on your cable, especially at severe angles and heavy loads. Next is your basic Haas fair lead. Now these are used with synthetic ropes and are best suited for the occasional user. So there you have it, recovery tools explained.